Well, welcome everyone. I love the energy in this room today. It's fabulous to see so many of you here today, and I want to thank you for coming out in this beautiful Erie day. So thank you for joining us. We're here to celebrate today, and I truly feel the celebration in the air. We're here to celebrate 3 years of conversation, 3 years of hard work, and 3 years of collaboration, resulting in the creation of Destination Erie, a regional vision. What we're celebrating today is due, in a very large part, to the people that are here in this room. So we're here celebrating Destination Erie, and we're here celebrating all of you. We have spent the last 3 years working to find common ground where we can stand together to protect and preserve the quality of life in our region. We're going to talk today about what we've learned, where we're headed, and how we'll get where we want to go. We're going to hear about the work and the opportunities that we have ahead of us. We're going to listen to the perspective of someone who's leading a similar effort that's several years down the road from where we are right now. And we're going to talk about why this effort is necessary so that our region can compete more successfully on a national and a global stage. And with any kind of competition, whether it's in sports, politics, or business, it is smart to scout your competitors. And all of us have spent time working or visiting other regions. We've had a chance to compare those regions to the Erie region. And I think we can all vouch for the fact that Erie is head and shoulders above the rest. We have the talent, we have the ingenuity, and we have the work ethic right here at home to compete with the world on a national stage, international stage. And we certainly are tough enough. Our families, they come from farms, they come from factories. We have grit, we're tenacious, and we are resilient. The question Destination Erie helps us answer is, how can we thrive? We can thrive by trusting one another and working together as a team. We can thrive by having the tenacity to not just take what circumstances throw at us, but to push through and rise through those circumstances. We can thrive by having the will to keep taking better and smarter risks that will pay dividends for our region. And we can thrive by having the backbone to stretch our way of thinking. Because we have to move beyond just accepting a scarcity mentality and move toward building abundance in our region. Destination Erie shows us how we as a region can succeed and how we can thrive. We should all feel very proud of having the courage to come together to create Destination Erie. Now, we have to have the will to implement it. Anna Franz, Destination Erie's project manager, will get the ball rolling for us this afternoon by reminding us of what we've accomplished these past 3 years. Anna?
Good afternoon, everyone. As Kathy mentioned, I'm the project manager for Destination Erie, and I am so excited to see you all here today for this celebration. This has been an enormous accomplishment for Erie County, the creation of the Destination Erie Plan. This has truly been a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to work together as a region, informed by data, analysis, and community input, to guide us to the future that we want for our region over the next 25 years. The completion of this plan represents several major achievements for the Erie County community. First, we've developed a deep understanding of the challenges that we face as a region and the assets that we have that we can build on to address those challenges. We've created a partnership around this work, a partnership within Erie County, as well as relationships that bridge county lines and state lines. We've articulated a vision for the future of the Erie region. And finally, we've created a roadmap to help us achieve that vision. All of this work is encompassed by Destination Erie, the Erie County community's strategic plan to create a stronger, more resilient, and more sustainable community. This work has only been possible because of the participation of Erie County residents throughout this process. Over 3,500 people have engaged with each other in this discussion about our shared future. Every step of the way, Erie residents were ready and willing to take the time to provide their perspective on our challenges and how those challenges address them in their communities. They provided their optimism about the future and about what Erie can become. And they've provided their creativity to help us get there. The Destination Erie strategy exists today only because of the participation and the sustained efforts of the folks here in this room today and the efforts of your friends, your colleagues, and your neighbors. So thank you very much for being a part of this process. This plan is also the result of the support provided by over 70 organizations that have represented the region in this process. The organizations that together form the Destination Erie Consortium. These organizations, which include government agencies, not-for-profit organizations, business associations, come from all over Erie County and all throughout the region, making this a truly regional effort. So thank you to the Destination Erie Consortium. I want to thank the steering committee and the project management staff. On behalf of Erie County, these individuals have attended countless meetings. They've ensured that the process has remained true to its original intent, and they've provided both vision as well as practicality so that the final plan is something that the entire community can be proud of. There have been several organizations that deserve a special thanks for providing significant funding and/or staff support toward this effort. And so I want to thank you to the Erie Community Foundation, the Erie County Department of Planning and the staff in that department, the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership and the staff at the Chamber, the Jefferson Educational Society, and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which has provided the bulk of the funding for this effort. And then finally, Destination Erie is a truly comprehensive effort, thanks to the wide variety of organizations that are represented on the consortium leadership team. These individuals have guided this process, and their work together has really formed the nexus of collaboration. The members of the CLT have gone well beyond their daily standard job duties to be a part of this effort and to provide their expertise for the betterment of the Erie County region. So I want to thank each and every member of the consortium leadership team for your involvement and your commitment to this work. Thank you to the CLT. We're looking forward to sharing the final plan with you shortly, but first we're going to hear from our guest, Dr. Jim Denova, who will be introduced by Barbara Chafee from the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership.
It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Jim Denova, Vice President of the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation. Jim holds a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh in social research and has over 35 years of experience in nonprofit administration and philanthropy. Dr. Denova is primarily responsible for the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation's education agenda in West Virginia and southwestern Pennsylvania, and is an active participant in the regional planning effort that bridges the borders of 32 counties and 4 states by engaging thousands of citizens and pulling together leaders in business, government, education, and philanthropy to create one regional vision known as the Power of 32. The Power of 32 has provided an opportunity to think creatively about regional challenges and opportunities, and it has identified the challenges and opportunities in which collaboration provides a better chance for success. It has created a platform for a regional commitment to that success. We are excited to learn from Dr. Denova's experiences in our neighboring community as we embark on the implementation of our regional plan for a sustainable development for decades to come. Each of you have received a note card. If you did not receive one, please raise your hand and one will be given to you. And we will be circulating to collect your questions. Mayor Joe Sennett will ask some of the questions at the close of Dr. Denova's presentation. Jim?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. I received a copy of your Destination Erie report earlier last week, and I'm extraordinarily impressed with the depth and the scope of the study, and I'm really looking forward to the recommendations today. What I thought I would do is take a few minutes to talk about the Power of 32 and go through some of the highlights of the process, because this is something that we started in 2008, and it's still in play. And there's some similarities, but also some differences. So I'd be very interested in the questions about what we believe worked well and what didn't, and I'll be very candid about what we would do differently if we could. But the whole premise, well, who cares about him? Okay. The whole premise of the Power of 32 started with the fact that the greater Pittsburgh area is really a multi-state metropolitan area. And there are opportunities, or we feel that it started with the premise that there are leveraging opportunities for certain initiatives that could be exercised across state lines that are inhibited by the geopolitical boundaries of both counties, municipalities, and states. So our premise really was to explore what could be done on an interstate basis that can't be done within those boundaries. So it began with this geography, 32 counties that wrap around Pittsburgh. And by the way, deciding on the boundaries was not a bloodless act either. And remains so. And I'm going to touch on geography in a moment after we talk about a few of the projects. But it started with this area, which is western Pennsylvania primarily, but northern West Virginia, eastern Ohio, and the very western tip of Maryland. And this was suggested because of live-work patterns that cross those state lines. And so the Power of 32 started with that assumption, and it then began with town hall meetings. It began with consensus of residents, did not start with research. It started with how do we identify and sort of bubble up the issues across this region. So there were 150 plus town hall meetings in every county of the region. Similar to your experience, over 3,000 people participated and really bubbled up broad issues, things that they felt were important to the local community, but also held opportunities if only they could be worked on across borders. And they were broadly defined in the areas of the economy, education, environment, government, something inexplicable called people and community and transportation. These 6 issues were then turned over to what we called issue teams. And these issue teams were really representatives of organizations. So we went from a populace input to sort of working committees of experts and lead organizations. Each one of the 6 was really a cross-representation of government, the private sector, academia, social service agencies, foundations, to really come up with specific initiatives that really applied to regional impact. And these 6 issue teams then came up with 14 initiatives. So there are 14 specific projects. And more importantly, those 14 specific projects were led by individual organizations. So it became, over the course of 3 or 4 years, this process of going from broad input to organizational analysis to then implementation. And those lead organizations then took responsibility through our own working committees, to look at what could be done on a regional basis. I personally worked with 3 or 4 of them, and I'd like to highlight those. Again, taking advantage of the opportunities in the area. So I want to show you another map, which doesn't look like the Power of 32. Because I think one of the most successful initiatives started out looking at trails. And it came out of that nondescript or nonspecific committee called People and Community. And they wanted to look at the natural environment and what could be done with it to a greater capacity. And that led to an interest in coming up with a trail network. And looking at how to connect trails to communities then led to an economic development initiative related to trails and outdoor recreation. How can communities revitalize their main streets, their commercial districts, and their economies around recreational tourism, or however it's defined by local communities? Many of these towns, by the way, were really distressed post-industrial coal and steel towns. And they were still looking at almost mournfully at the lost economy of coal and not looking ahead at a new customer base, outdoor tourists. More interestingly, other organizations and other communities asked if they could participate. So this is now the footprint of a regional trails coalition that includes 53 counties in 5 states. And that happened because trail groups from Cleveland, Erie, Chautauqua, New York, Parkersburg, West Virginia, and the Great Allegheny Passage, which links Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., said, we want to be a part of this network. We want to help complete a regional trails network that would connect these destinations, because these are attractive destinations for bikers and hikers and visitors to the outdoors. And so we did not plan this, by the way. This is a runaway train in a very good way. And the lead organizations for this started with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, which is an environmental organization, then teamed up with the National Rails to Trails Conservancy, and an economic development agency called the Progress Fund that lends to businesses in outdoor recreation. So those 3 groups are actually overseeing this regional trail network. And they've gone on to develop a GIS system that local trail groups use. They have started a marketing campaign. They have secured local groups, not us. Local groups have raised over $12 million to work on various corridors. So there's a regional planning commission that looks at this map, and it's 1,600 miles of trail with broken sections. So it's a wonderful planning tool where very, very small groups and large regional groups can figure out, how do we close the gaps here? How do we close the gaps there? Who wants to finance it? Who cares? How can we keep the whole picture going? So that Washington, D.C. is not part of the region, but it's a destination. Chicago is not in the picture, but it's a destination. And that's what's really important to tourism. How to get people to visit the entire region and leave their money behind. That's the other part of the economic development plan. Interestingly, Erie to Pittsburgh trail groups are the more recent addition to this coalition, and we've put some money into working with the Progress Fund to lend to businesses along that corridor. As a funder, and there are other foundations use this map all the time. And this project has attracted foundations that see outdoor recreation as a conservation initiative. There are those who see it as an economic development initiative. and there are those that see it as a public health initiative. So I say this is the kind of project that's something for everybody as long as you want to come with your checkbook. So we've been organizing foundations all over the area to support it. And it is one of those projects, and I want to make comment here about planning doesn't have to be prescriptive. We had no idea it would take off in this direction. One of the things that's worked well is to allow this decentralized model to sort of take hold and see where it can go, to be opportunistic, to be open to what can be. And I also want to emphasize that even though we started with geography, we weren't restricted by geography. We wanted it to be logical, depending on the issue. So this is a Power 32 that sort of blew up into 53. And this is another one, slightly smaller than the Power 32. This is 27 counties. This is the footprint of another project that is called ShaleNet. One of the regional opportunities that cross state lines is the natural gas industry and the potential for manufacturing growth in this region in the future. And Washington County, which is in the most western part of Pennsylvania, is what I now call the capital of Metro Pittsburgh, because the employers who are headquartered there are hiring from these 27 counties. They don't care about a residence, or they don't care about a municipality. They care about workers. So the Allegheny Conference, which is a local business association, took the lead in organizing community colleges and career and tech centers across this 27 county region. So there are 6 community colleges and about twice as many secondary schools who are ramping up and changing their curricula and their certification programs to comply with the anticipated job demands in natural gas. And I just want to be clear, because this has been in play for a few years and that industry is reaching a level of maturity in our area. The jobs are not in drilling. That comes and goes. Early on with the shale development in our area, there was a lot of hysteria about all the license plates from Texas taking our jobs. But in effect, it didn't happen. They came and drilled and left. The real job potential is in advanced manufacturing. So taking the long view, the Allegheny Conference and an energy industry oversight committee is looking at what's going to be needed over the next 10 years. And they're in mechatronics and related robotics manufacturing jobs. Those are jobs that are going to stay. But they also want to make sure, if they're in Washington, Pennsylvania, the capital of Pittsburgh, and they're hiring from a 2-hour radius, they want to ensure that the educational preparation reaches a certain standard of workforce requirement, but also is even across the board. So that particular Power 32 project is really organizing community colleges to work across state lines, to recruit and place across state lines, and not compete with one another. So I bring this up because it doesn't have to hit all 32 counties. In this case, the most logical pattern based on employment growth is going to be 27. So we can call it the power of whatever. The important thing is to look at the particular initiatives, how they emerged, and what's the logical level of inclusion across the board. So we're at the point now where several organizations are executing and implementing these various programs independently. There is no major oversight committee. There is a small group that communicates the progress of these various initiatives manages a website, issues a newsletter, which are sort of highlights in different aspects of different projects. But right now, it's remaining in a very decentralized, sort of lateral management structure. So it was an interesting process because a lot of that emerged as time moved forward. I could tell you that one of the things that did not work so well is when we unveiled the plan. This is my cautionary tale, if I can just mention this one thing. In December 2011, we went on public television and announced the 12 projects, and all these organizations were there. And then they went about their business working. So 6 months later, the media headlines were, "What the heck ever happened to the Power of 32?" Then we had to ramp up sort of a media campaign, but I think we lost traction. So if there's any flaw in a decentralized model, it's making sure that once various groups are working on various initiatives, that the public be informed, that the 3,000 people that participated in the beginning know that something came from the time they spent in it. I don't think we did that particularly well. So we're trying to make up for it now. So there are some projects that are moving ahead very well, some fits and starts, and a continuous need to make sure everybody involved is aware of the status and how they can help move it forward. So let me stop there, if I may. Do you want me to wait for questions, or I'm happy to take questions from the floor? And by the way, the progress report is here that kind of outlines not only the projects, but also the process. And Anna has an electronic copy if anybody wants one. Contact her. Is that okay? Sure. Okay.
Dr. Denova, thank you very much for your remarks. It's clear
Sure.
that the process that you followed from the onset is very similar to the one that we've undertaken here. I think it's been helpful to us to hear some of the things that you encountered and some of the challenges, and hopefully that'll help us as we continue to move our process forward. So good luck as you move Process 32 forward. We'll be watching for your future successes.
Thank you. And likewise.
And I think hopefully, based on the fact that we use the same type of model, hopefully that model will turn out to be very successful for you, because that means it'll probably be successful for us as well. We're going to have a couple of questions here from the audience, but I'm going to start it with a pre-prepared question that we have. And that is, it appears that the Power of 32 has been a true public-private partnership. It has not been led solely by government entities, but has involved educational, nonprofit, and business groups as well, as has Destination Erie. What challenges and what benefits has that structure provided to the Power of 32 implementation?
I think one of the greatest benefits of having a cross-sector leadership structure is that it allows those entities that have the greatest versatility to work across state lines are those that are leading some of these projects. There are clearly county and state officials on a number of these committees, but when it's felt or determined that a private entity is the most appropriate, the private entity would lead the project. And I think that balance has helped the process move forward. Most of the projects are led by private organizations with government participation in the oversight.
Thank you. Are there specific processes and outcome metrics that you are tracking and reporting on?
Yes. Well, actually, every one of the 14 projects has its own set of metrics. So that, for example, I mentioned the Community College Initiative. They are tracking curriculum development, graduation rates, hire rates, and retention rates. So it's a pretty traditional workforce development initiative. This trail program on a monthly basis track the number of completed miles of the 1,600 miles in this network. We're 53% completed. That's tracked continuously. But probably more importantly, there is an economic impact analysis where we can start to look at what kind of return that the businesses in these trail corridors are seeing as a result. So those are the two important metrics there. So each project has its own.
Okay, great. Did you have any early wins after the plan was formulated?
I would say the greatest wins were in the educational area, where there are several federal grants that were attracted to the area because it was multi-state. So there were 2 Department of Commerce grants to that energy-related career education project of $20 million combined. But more interestingly, there's another education grant that I didn't mention, which is to look at STEAM education in the K-12 system. And it attracted an NSF grant of a couple of $1 million for West Virginia, based on the work that Carnegie Mellon University Robotics Center is doing in rural communities. That wouldn't have happened without the power of 32. It's purely cooperative. It could have. But the convening power of bringing entities like that together that wouldn't otherwise encounter was very powerful.
Okay.
I consider those early wins.
Of course. What should we be asking of our representatives in Washington, D.C. to further our goals? Would more federal austerity make things worse?
Will more federal austerity make things worse?
I didn't write this one.
I would say sure. Let me work backwards. That felt like it was a trick question.
It may have been.
I think the message to Washington is A, be less austere, but when allocating, making federal investments, doing so to consortia like yours and like the Power of 32 that shows a very diversified, engaged citizenry is the best bang for the buck.
I would agree with that.
Can I just say one more thing about that? Because one of the surprising outcomes is that there was much less government bickering over resources than we feared. Everybody says they want to work together, but when there's a dollar on the table, sometimes it doesn't always play out that way. But one of the projects is a pooled investment fund for brownfield redevelopment, and that's when everybody strapped in and said, here we go. But there was an interstate commission that pooled the funds, and they're allocating remediation dollars across state borders. And the governors are okay with that, so it can be done.
That's good.
But that was a pleasant surprise.
Doctor, thank you again for sharing your experiences with us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And I'll stay around if anybody else has questions.
Okay, great.
I want to hear about the plan.
Oh, good. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much to our guest, Dr. Denova. Now, we didn't have time to get to all of the questions. He'll be around during the reception if folks want to come up and ask him questions individually, and we'll also try to get some of those questions answered and put them on our website after this event. So now let's take it back to the Erie region. Come up north again where it's snowing today, even though it's almost April. Let's see. So, okay. To me, this quote perfectly summarizes why Destination Erie is so important to our region right now. There are thousands of us and hundreds of organizations that are working hard every day to create our region's future. Yet many of us share the growing sense that for all of our talent and all of our work, we're not moving quickly enough. We're not getting to exactly where we want to be. It's like we're in a big circular boat and we're all pulling on an oar, but because it's a circle, we're just spinning in circles and kind of being tossed around by the tide or by the currents. Paddling harder isn't really helping. It's just spinning us. So Destination Erie helps us to take back control of where we're going so that we can pull together and move in the same direction. It gives us the means so that each of our individual efforts, no matter how well-meaning and how successful they are on their own, they can add to our region's momentum. And that's what the Erie region needs right now. We need some momentum toward the future. That future is within reach. Our county is remarkably diverse, both culturally as well as geographically. So we may have different ideas of how to achieve this vision for the future. But this vision, our end goal, is a shared one. And it reflects things that we're already working toward. A more thriving, educated, green, livable, and connected community for ourselves and for our children. This vision is important because it reminds us what we're working towards every day, and also what we're working against. As I mentioned, through this process, many people have communicated a sense that we're not attaining our full potential, that Erie has challenges that we haven't fully grasped or understood. Destination Erie has let us examine those issues closely and from multiple perspectives so that we can address them more effectively. Data has accumulated illustrating these issues. Through stakeholder interviews and discussions with groups of local experts, we've helped to crystallize them. Then we've gotten feedback from the public that's helped us to understand how those issues are impacting us on a day-to-day basis. It's not our purpose today to go too far into the details of any of these issues, but I want to just call out a few key points. First, the number of jobs in our region has not grown in the last 30 years. There's been no increase, compared with a 20% increase in the number of jobs nationwide during that same period. Our economy is lacking some drive. We're not providing the opportunities that all of our residents need in order to thrive. We've got a skills gap. Though 1 in 11 Erie County residents is a college or a university student, we have a lower percentage than the country of high-skilled workers, and that's limiting our competitiveness. This represents lost income that could otherwise be used to help support our economy. And it also represents the loss of people who grow up in Erie, who attend school here, and who can't come home to raise their families and can't remain here because they can't find jobs that utilizes those skills. And thirdly, if we continue to build the way that we are, we will simply further complicate our municipal finances and compromise our environmental assets. Over the last 30 years, we've built almost 20 new homes for each new resident of Erie County. We're building faster than we're growing, and as a result, we're expanding infrastructure without increasing our population to support that infrastructure and the cost of it. We're growing in undeveloped areas, and we're disinvesting in our older neighborhoods. So what can we do? Well, Destination Erie includes over 40 recommendations to build the foundation for a stronger community and to address these issues. So we'll talk about a handful of these issues right now. In order to strengthen our economy, to help it grow, and make sure that it's not vulnerable to global forces that are really outside of our control, we need to diversify it. We've got to build on our strong history of manufacturing, but we also need to embrace new industries, technology, renewable energy, education, healthcare, tourism. We need to foster an environment that supports innovation and entrepreneurship, as well as risk-taking, so that we can increase the number of startup companies, but that we can also increase innovation within existing companies that are located here in Erie. This requires networks of support. So the Innovation Collaborative, the planned Idea Lab right here in the Blasco Library are both great examples of the kinds of initiatives that we need to support innovation. A more diverse economy will also be achieved by looking at the contributions of our anchor institutions. These are large institutions like hospitals, universities, even municipal governments that are rooted here in Erie County. Those institutions spend a lot of money on hiring and purchasing and supplies and services that can be leveraged to support the growth of businesses, particularly in low-income communities here in Erie. Tourism It's already a $1 billion industry here in Erie County, and it has the potential for even more growth. Through Destination Erie, we've already brought together the 5 leaders of the tourism agencies throughout our region together to talk about opportunities that they might have to work together, attract more visitors than they would otherwise be able to do individually. Our human capital is the most important asset that Erie has to offer. So we need to train and to educate a workforce that is globally competitive. Our educational system must include cutting-edge programs so that we can become a region that employers are flocking to, and so that our children can be successful in whatever it is that they choose to pursue. Our work has to touch people along the entire educational spectrum, starting as early as pre-kindergarten and reaching all the way into adult education and workforce training. Advocacy for quality early education programs has already started locally, and it's building. So the next step is to create a formal alliance among business leaders, agencies, and initiatives so that we can start to overcome the affordability and the transportation barriers that are preventing families from accessing these kinds of programs. We've got to provide opportunities for purposeful education so that students have a seamless pathway from school and college and training programs straight into family-sustaining employment. There are initiatives already out there, such as Career Street, which are a great start. So we can build on those programs with apprenticeship programs, or an initiative like a Manchester Bidwell, which helps to empower people with high-quality training programs in partnership with local employers. And our Workforce Investment Board is critical to our future. It's got to be rebuilt so that it can play a leading role in helping to coordinate all these efforts and also to go aggressively after funding the state and national level to bring more innovative workforce development programs here into our region. How close we live to jobs, how many of our neighbors are employed, the poverty in our communities, our access to public transportation, our exposure to environmental health hazards. All of these factors contribute to our likelihood of success in life. For our region to thrive, we've got to bridge these barriers to opportunity so that regardless of the community that we grow up in, all Erie residents have the opportunity to succeed. The public was very vocal through this process about the need for a better, more comprehensive, more reliable public transportation system to support economic development goals, but also to address the needs of our seniors who are trying to get to medical appointments. For young adults who are trying to get to after-school programs and don't want to rely on a ride from mom or dad. And just to improve our quality of life overall. So we've had conversations with the EMTA throughout this process, and it's clear that they're ready to move to sort of a more business model of efficiently providing services where it's needed, and also to better leverage the funding that is out there to support a more reliable and comprehensive system. Internet service, as more and more of us realize, is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. It's a utility. And it's necessary for individual needs as well as for our region to be competitive with other regions throughout the country. So we've got to ensure access to broadband internet service. We need to make it part of our infrastructure and an economic development as well as an educational priority. We have a number of food deserts here throughout the county, both in our urban areas as well as throughout our rural communities. Partnerships are already working to start to address the barriers that are preventing grocery stores from locating in some of our downtown areas, which is great, and we can build on that and boost our agricultural economy as well by bringing more of the produce that's grown throughout the region into our kitchens, which makes our population healthier and also increases food security because we've decreased reliance on shipments of food from across the country. Erie County is built, and our natural environment, our cities and towns, and our rural landscapes are some of our most unique assets. We need to become better stewards of these resources, ensuring that our development patterns don't inadvertently destabilize neighborhoods and result in the loss of undeveloped lands. We need to strengthen the centers of our communities, efficiently providing infrastructure and services where they're most needed to support business growth and strong neighborhoods. A land bank is the kind of initiative that would help to address some of the issue of blight that's creeping into many of our neighborhoods. The complexity of instituting this kind of program, though, will require county-level coordination among multiple municipalities. The quality of our water is critical to our future, and our access to clean water, the abundance of clean water that we have here, is one of our major assets. However, the burden of protecting this resource is primarily placed on our 38 municipalities. Let's give our communities support and assistance so that they can increase the use of green infrastructure techniques. Those are natural techniques to manage stormwater runoff so that we can preserve the quality of our water. We've learned through this process that many of our communities share similar issues. For example, the loss of properties off of the tax rolls. Communities must have a strong forum so that they can come together to work aggressively and also collaboratively to address the complex fiscal and policy issues that they face. They will be better off if they're working through those issues together rather than on their own. For most of us, what we love about Erie, it's not how we spend time at work, it's how we spend time outside of work. What we do with our families, our communities, our neighborhoods. We have fantastic recreational facilities here in Erie. We have a dynamic arts and cultural scene that contributes to all aspects of our life. We have distinctive neighborhoods and communities. By preserving and enhancing the characteristics that Erie residents value in these communities, we improve our own quality of life, and we also make this region more attractive for visitors and for companies that might be looking to locate here. So let's start a historic preservation initiative to shore up and to preserve those historic properties that are so valuable to all of our communities. Our population growth will depend, to some extent, on the residents who are arriving here from other countries, as it always has. We need to celebrate the ways in which these immigrant populations make Erie an interesting, a vibrant, and a growing community. Let's look for ways to support and leverage their contributions to our economy and to our culture. Regarding trail development, Dr. Denova talked about some of the incredible things that are happening just to the south of us and that are actually starting to reach here into Erie County. So we have a fantastic opportunity to build on that work. And this is something that people spoke quite a bit about through the public process. People in Erie want places to move around outside no matter what the weather is. So let's connect our communities with a world-class trail network that makes it easier for our residents to be more active and also attracts people from all across the country. Together, these recommendations and many more will create a stronger foundation for Erie County, a foundation that we can build upon to create a more connected, educated, green, livable, and thriving community. I've only scratched the surface here. There are 42 recommendations, and so I invite you to review all of them after this event as part of our reception. So, the million-dollar question, how are we possibly going to get all of this done? Well, we've already started. Erie has identified where we want to go. We have laid out a plan to get there, and it's grounded in many of the efforts that are already underway. So it's now on all of us. It's on the leaders and the doers in this room and throughout the county to build on what the Erie community has already achieved over the last 3 years. We'll start this work by marking the transition to implementation with a new name, because this kind of regional public-private partnership and comprehensive effort is something new for Erie, and it's really something that's quite unique across the country. Emerge 2040, a focused partnership for the Erie region's future. This will be the coordinating voice that helps to align our efforts, to help ensure that the steps that we take are moving together. Over the next 25 years, we'll be able to see the Erie County region of the future emerge from its present. Emerge 2040 will help us to expand the collaborations that have developed through this process, looking for opportunities to build on our assets to become more sustainable and more competitive. How can you play a role in Emerge 2040? The first thing is you can become connected to this effort. We have all created this plan, and so we must all play a part in moving it forward. So please, during the reception, if you or your organization wants to play a role in moving one of the 42 initiatives forward, please let us know. Sign up. If you're interested in joining the Emerge 2040 Consortium, sign up. Or if you simply want regular updates on the progress, you want to hear about what's going on, add your name to the list. Ooh. Let's also build on the extensive public dialogue that has led us to this point. As we move forward, we'll continue to create opportunities for the public, to provide feedback on the direction that we're taking, and to continue to refresh the ideas that will make our community stronger. And then third, just as we started this process with a deep understanding and analysis of the data and the trends that we're facing, we must continue to look at the data to track our progress. So we will be using indicators such as Erie Vital Signs to measure our success. The Emerge 2040 Steering Committee will help to facilitate these efforts, ensuring that we achieve the community's vision. This group brings together Erie County municipal and county officials and leaders who represent a variety of perspectives. Together, this group will help to set priorities for action and identify opportunities for progress and for collaboration. We are really excited and grateful for their involvement going forward. This kind of sustained effort will take time and it will take resources. So we have a number of organizations that have already stepped up to build on the momentum that we've generated through this process. So I want to acknowledge and thank the first contributors to Emerge 2040 for helping us move beyond the planning phase into implementation. Thank you to the City of Erie, to Erie County, to Erie Events, to the Erie Regional Airport Authority, the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership, and to GE Transportation for helping make this happen. Emerge 2040 will work for all of us. Its mission will be to help Erie achieve its vision for the future. That vision of an educated, green, connected, livable, and thriving Erie is feasible, and it's already underway with all of the efforts that you all are helping to push forward. With today's release of the Destination Erie Plan, we are making a statement that as a region, we are on a path to a stronger future. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Bill Garvey, who will introduce one additional way that you can be a part of Emerge 2040.
Well, thank you, Anna. So I'm all that stands between you and the end of the program. And the question is, how do we bring it to a satisfactory close after all of these wonderful comments and all of these exciting concepts? You know, you wouldn't be normal, wouldn't be human if you're not out there saying, somehow we've heard these kind of things before. Can planning efforts work in Erie? If there is a power of 32 that's working, how about a power of 38, which is the number of municipalities in Erie County? Can we make it work? There have been failures in planning in the past. We have had ideas that have never emerged. And yet, going back into history, it's important to point out that Erie has been formed by two major planning efforts like this. The first one was the Nolan Report of 1913 that dramatically changed this community and turned its orientation back to the waterfront. And there was another major effort in the 1950s, the Rotoval Plan, spurred by the Chamber of Commerce in both cases. The report of the Rotoval had a dramatic impact on the community. We're still living with what the Rotoval called for. The Airport Authority, the authority on the waterfront, our Port Authority, all of these are a result of successful planning efforts. And where does it come? About every 50 years. 1913, late 1950s, and now it's 50 years again. So the cycle is not automatically successful, but it does suggest that it can be done. It has been done. Erieites have twice before risen to the challenge and carried it out. Now, I was asked today to offer some historical context to it all. And for those of you who remember your American history, and for those of you who don't, there is a great historical context for it. Go back into the history of our own country. Go back to the Declaration of Independence. And what you're going to see today is a signing of a commitment to the pledge of collaboration to make this work. And why have we chosen something that you have to sign? Because when you sign, you commit something. This country was created because people came together to sign the Declaration of Independence under a lot more threatening conditions than you're going to face this afternoon. And as a matter of fact, I should point out that they agreed from the very beginning that there would be no declaration unless all 13 colonies agreed. One negative vote would have killed it. One no vote. Unity was that critical that they agreed that unless we all hang together, as Ben Franklin said, we will surely all hang separately. And so these 13 colonies, almost like 13 nations, came together to draft a declaration. And in it, they had some pretty striking phrases. For example, they said very clearly, and this was very, very important, that to make this work, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Now, we're not going to ask you today to pledge your lives, or your fortunes, or at least most of it. But we want you to pledge your sacred honor, those of you who can feel to do that we will rise together because we are stronger together than we are separately. And it can work. And it has worked, as I mentioned earlier. If you look at the early history of our country again, look at the Articles of Confederation. For those few of you who remember the Articles of Confederation, and those of you who do should deserve an A, because most of us don't, it's been regarded as a failure, and yet it wasn't. The Articles of Confederation was the first government of this country in which all 13 colonies came together and, afraid of central power, agreed to a very limited form of government because they knew that unless they came together, they would perish individually. When the British were asked to send an ambassador to the early United States, they were said, we can't send an ambassador to these United States. We'd have to send 13. 13. You're not together. There is no such thing as a nation. The Articles of Confederation then came together, the first government of the United States, and did some really good things. Now, that was a tough government. You can imagine, as Kathy or Joe would be, if you had to have every single vote. You couldn't pass anything unless all 13 colonies, or in this case, all 13 states agreed. But they did pass some important legislation. The Northwest Ordinance is one. But that's not the importance of it. In the end, it failed. It wasn't strong enough, and the Founding Fathers had to come together again to decide how to strengthen it. But what's interesting is that the very people who had worked together in the Articles, who learned to work together and discover and find that Pennsylvania and Georgia had more in common than differences, that they could create a country, a much stronger group. And although that wasn't even easy, they put together a constitution, the oldest constitution in the world, 280-some years old. And they left 50 states because they all merged into one. Well, we're 38. We need to rediscover in Erie County what we discovered every 50 years. It's time to come together again. It's time to commit that we is stronger than I, and that every part of this county is important, and that we're going to rise or fall together. One had to only read the paper this morning to see that in the last 20 years, the last 15 years, more precisely, we've lost 2,400 people in this county. There has been no growth. There are some spectacular stories of success, but as a whole, we're running in place. So it's time we run together. It's time we put together our own individual concerns and learn to work together. It's a lot easier than the Founding Fathers had. It's a lot easier than the constitutional makers had, because we have enormous strengths. And so what you see today is the beginning of the third phase of Erie history. And we're going to mark it by a declaration, which means we're going to ask the committee, who is behind it, the new steering committee of 2040, to come to this, up to this stage and to sign the Declaration of Independence. If we had a bell, we would ring it for each one of them signing, because it's a dramatic moment. And in that signing, they aren't pledging their lives or their fortune, but they are promising to work together to overcome differences and to argue things out until we can come up with a common thing. Now, the first signers, with all due respect, will be the head of our Congress, Kathy Dahlkemper. And I want to remind Kathy that when the first signer of the Declaration signed it, he wrote it very large, a guy by the name of Hancock, so that King George III would be able to read it. So Kathy, if we're going to stay historically accurate, your signature should be the best. And I would imagine that, Joe, you will follow. Now, when they've signed some of their lives, certainly, perhaps none of their fortune, but certainly their honor, we will then ask each of you if you want to sign. And you won't have to come to the stage, but when this is over, there will be a place for you to sign out in the hallway, because your signature is important. What it says, in fact and indeed, if you sign, and when this committee signs, is that we recognize that we're at an historic moment. It is time that once again we move the community forward. It is time, as John Kennedy would say, let us begin. Thank you very much, folks, and don't forget to sign. All right.